Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Business Insider. Egyptian authorities are working around the clock to host, on behalf of the African continent, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 2022, COP27, in Sharm el-Sheikh, the City of Peace, from November 6th to November 18th. This year's international gathering aims to establish legally binding commitments for developed countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Egypt focuses on urgent and priority issues the African continent needs in particular, and in developing countries in general, such as adaptation and climate finance. And of course, Egypt is looking to serve the whole world as well. Unofficial themes at the COP27, although Egypt is hosting the UN activities of COP27, the country put forward an agenda for themes to be tackled in the conference over 10 days. Those unofficial themes include adaptation and agriculture, green funding, energy, biodiversity, science, solution, reduction of greenhouse gases, water, women's role, and youth's role. And we'll be talking here in this episode about that great event Egypt is waiting for, and the whole world is waiting for, to be hosted by the City of Peace, Sharm el-Sheikh, the beautiful Red Sea resort, in early November this year, again from the 6th to the 18th to be more precise. And we'll be talking about the benefits of this great conference to Egypt and to Africa and to the region and the international community. And we're delighted to have with us here in the studio Dr. Mohamed Abdel Jawwad, and he is Professor of Molecular and Environmental Biotechnology and also Professor of Immunology at Helwan University. Dr. Abdel Jawwad, great pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Dear viewers, let's watch first this report about the upcoming hosting by Egypt here in Sharm el-Sheikh of COP27, and return to our dear guests and start our discussion. Please stay with us.
The 27th session of the Conference of the Parties, COP27, to the UNFCCC will take place in the Red Sea Resort in Sharm el-Sheikh next November. COP27 was originally expected to take place from the 8th to the 20th of November 2021. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, COP26 was rescheduled from November 2020 to November 2021. As a result, COP27 will take place from the 7th to the 18th of November 2022. The country would work to make the conference a radical turning point in international climate efforts in coordination with all parties for the benefit of Africa and the entire world. An official website for the COP27 was created, and the Foreign Ministry also created an official Facebook page and a Twitter account for the big event. The COP27 event will be held in Sharm el-Sheikh International Convention Center, one of the largest and most innovative conference centers in the Middle East and Africa. The complex has a variety of flexible conference and exhibition halls that will form the blue zone for COP27. The green zone will be opposite to the conference center and will serve as an active space for youth groups, civil society, academia, artists and businesses from across Egypt, Africa, and the whole rest of the world. It will host events, exhibitions, cultural performances, workshops and talks. The conference comprises the meeting of COP27, the 7th The conference comprises the meetings of COP27, the 17th session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, and the fourth session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. The first 2 days of the event, on the 7th and 8th of November, will see the holding of the World Leaders Summit, while on the 9th of November, it will witness sessions related to climate finance. Egypt's COP27 website says that finance is the cornerstone for implementing climate actions and scaling up ambition, and hence it has been at the heart of the UNFCCC process and the Paris Agreement negotiations. It adds that the Glasgow outcomes also reiterated the centrality of finance as a catalyst for progress in all aspects of the global climate agenda, and many parties demonstrated the political will to deliver on finance commitments. A session will be dubbed Adaptation and Agriculture Day to discuss the adaptation to the impact of climate change. Agriculture and food systems as adaptation and resilience are of crucial importance to all parties, and in particular developing countries. According to the agenda posted on the website, 14 November will be Water Day. According to UNICEF, climate change is disrupting weather patterns, leading to extreme weather events, unpredictable water availability, exacerbating water scarcity, and contaminating water supplies. UNICEF says around 74% of natural disasters between 2001 and 2018 were water-related, including droughts and floods. The frequency and intensity of such events are only expected to increase with climate change. It adds that such impact can drastically affect the quantity and quality of water that children need to survive. 1 billion children are at extremely high risk of the impact of climate crisis. Another session will touch on biodiversity. That day will deal with nature and ecosystem-based solutions, opening discussions on the impact of climate change on biodiversity and the means to mobilize global action towards challenges to halt biodiversity loss and to reduce the impact of climate change and pollution. According to the UN, unprecedented changes in climate and biodiversity driven by human activities have combined to increasingly threaten nature, human lives, livelihoods, and the well-being of the world. Biodiversity loss and climate change are both driven by human economic activities and mutually reinforce each other. The website noted that the incoming COP27 in Egypt has identified a range of topics focused on enhancing implementation and raising ambitions on a broad range of issues related to climate change, according to the official website.
All right, thank you for tuning in to this report, and thanks to Rasha Abdel and Abir Hussein for this report. Back here with our dear guest in the studio, Dr. Mohamed Abdel Jawwad. Dr. Abdel Jawwad, I want to start before getting into the specifics by some nice words that were said by Dr. Zahi Hawass, the renowned, of course, Egyptologist and former Minister of Antiquities, when he said that hosting the UNFCCC's Climate Change Summit COP27 is a huge event at all levels that entails great publicity for Egypt. Dr. Hawass added that Egypt has a great history and was able to preserve nature and a stable climate, and that is why today, in the 21st century, still the words of Dr. Hawass, seeing President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi heading this summit with presidents from all over the world places Egypt at the limelight of international press via a climate summit held at a beautiful spot, Sharm el-Sheikh. A comment on
I fully agree
words.
with Dr. Hawass, because COP27 and holding it in Egypt this year, it has put an end to the dominance of the European and the American countries to host this very important, I would say, strategic, scientific, global event. And Egypt is considered the first Arabic, African, and Middle Eastern country to host this. And Egypt now is flagging the beacon to have a place for the middle income countries and low income countries to have their voice heard so clearly to others who should make commitment to their pledges and commitments.
Indeed. Now, also, the former Assistant Minister of Tourism and Antiquities for Promotion and Narrative PR Summit said that COP27 is a prominent event of local and international impact. It would also reflect positively on a number of sectors in the Egyptian state, including environmental, economic, tourism, media, and others. So, I mean, environment is your field. I want to speak about that, the environmental field, and also about the economy in this economic-oriented program.
I agree with you in all, but I'll just change the hierarchy of your work.
Okay.
I will start with the political impact.
Of course.
Because for the political impact, we are trying to reclaim our rightful position as leading a country in Africa and the Middle East.
And you will see that in the title of,
Yes.
Of our program, the slogan is the economic and political benefits indeed.
Exactly.
Yes.
And aside from this, I would like to recommend and give a great salute to the website of the COP27. It's very good, very straightforward,
yes.
concise, and it's actually conveying the message in a very clear way. The second, for sure, is the environmental impact. Because actually, Egypt, as with as most of the African countries, we are not the problem. Actually, we are suffering from the problem. I will just say that there is something called world meter for the greenhouse effect or the carbon dioxide emission. Let's start the first one, the first country which is responsible for 29 to 30% of the global carbon dioxide emission is China. The second one is US 14 to 15%.
There had to be one or
the
two.
The third one is India, 7%. The fourth one is Russia, and the fifth one is Japan. Collectively, they form more than 60% of the global greenhouse. So actually, they owe us. They owe us Africa and the low-income countries and middle-income countries like Egypt to solve the problem, to find solutions. And here we'll come for the environment, because environment is not something that one country owes. We are all living in the same planet, and we will suffer from the same catastrophic effect of climate change. This will bring us that they should commit to their pledges that they have put in Copenhagen Summit, in Paris Treaty, and lastly in the Glasgow COP26. This brings us to the finance, and this is the cutting edge. As they say in the report, it's the cornerstone for the mitigation, because for me, mitigation is the first thing, then adaptation, then protection. The current situation is that most 80% of the climate finance is directed to the adaptation and only 20% to mitigation. The world now is seeking, and it will be, and it is one of the main messages of the COP27, is to make a balance between adaptation and mitigation, and to make sure that the finance go to the countries that are really suffering for climate change. You could imagine that there is some islands have completely wiped out from the earth because of climate change. There are many floods, many hurricanes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Everyone has noticed that there is an increase in the temperature now that you cannot endure. It's almost like, I'm really sorry, like hell. So we have to collaborate globally, and everyone has to cooperate in relation to the amount of disastrous things he is putting, not us. Egypt is only contributing to only 0.6% of the global carbon dioxide emission, which is very minute, very small. 0.6. 0.6. Compared to the others, they contribute only 5 countries, 65%. And we have in the UNFCCC or CCC, as you said, we have 192 countries. So you could imagine that only 10 is contributing for more than 90%. So the countries of Africa, led by Egypt, they have to put the responsibilities of the other countries and to translate their words into action plan to have an equitable climate finance to the people that really need it and the people that are really affected by the climate change.
Indeed. Speaking of, you said mitigation, adaptation
and protection.
Protection.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the order where the world should be,
from my point of view,
focusing.
Yes.
So where are we now? It's
the current situation is 80% for adaptation and only 20% for mitigation. Because astonishingly that neither China or US, according to reports, they are not doing actually sincere efforts to decrease their carbon dioxide emission. Even there are some courts, I don't remember, it's a constitution court in US, they have give a verdict that we don't have to commit ourselves for lowering our carbon dioxide emission.
That's why there is a focus on having legally binding agreement.
Exactly, legally committing agreement. So all they are doing now, they are just transferring their heavy, what they call heavy manufacturing to Asia and Africa. So we are suffering for their benefit. I'm very frank. And if you are going to continue with this suffering, we have to pay it for this.
Yeah, it's been going on for too long, hasn't it?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Abdel Jawwad, the conservation of the environment with its climate and resources, by the way, was a priority for ancient Egyptians.
Sure. Yes.
So it falls within the Egyptian state's current efforts across sectors to promote awareness of the importance of the environmental preservation. Could you talk to us about the state's view? How do you see the state's efforts? And you talked about the political weight and gains for Egypt. Egypt's playing a leading role globally in this fight. So talk to us about that vision.
Sure. As you said, from a historical point of view, the pharaohs, our ancestors, were very restricted to have an environmental green and clean environment. And now the state or the political leadership is not saving any effort to increase this. Since we have declared 2 years ago that we are going to host COP27, there are, I could say, not gigantic efforts, it's miraculous efforts from different ministries of environment, ministries of higher education, research,
health, education,
yes, international
tourism,
relations, tourism,
interior.
Exactly. So there is not even one day without a conference or a workshop or an info session held by the in different ministries, exactly, to increase the awareness, yes, and finding financing. And actually one of the plans and objective of the COP27 is to secure $100 billion for different climate change solutions, which is actual real solutions. From the financing point of view, the Academy of Science has just launched a few months ago a big, what they call, competition for research in climate change, the same for Science, Technology and Development Fund. And it's not only on research, for the youth, the info session, and actually there is a competition on how to aware and increase the awareness, how to make a clean environment. So actually the states is not saving any effort to increase the awareness and attract as much as financeability to climate change.
Indeed. I want to talk about some of the themes that we are waiting to see in November in Sharm el-Sheikh, and some of these themes, again, I understand that these are unofficial themes, but they will be put forward on the table. So we have one, for instance, for solution, or for water, or for biodiversity. Can you talk to us about the first one is adaptation and agriculture?
Of course, the climate change and the environmental changes that's happening, and mainly the excessive global warming, it affects the agriculture because many of the crops or the plants are not that resistant to this excessive warming. So we are losing tons of crops, which may lead to food insecurity. This is on one hand. On the other hand, there are mitigation plans in this aspect, which are first, we have to protect our biodiversity, our crops that is known for each country. We have to develop, through research, genetically modified strains of crops that are resistant for drought and heat. This is one of the plans, and Egypt is really moving along. I have attended at least 3 workshops in this.
Yes.
Water, it's for sure, you have seen that now there are drying for rivers in Europe. So everyone is witnessing by his eye what is happening and what should be the future if we don't collaborate to prevent this catastrophe.
Well, what might indicate, Dr. Abdel Jawwad, how urgent the situation is and how some of the world's biggest economies are not cooperating is that, for instance, Egypt is emphasizing that it intends to focus on implementing existing carbon reduction targets rather than pushing for further cuts. So that means we first have to, commit to what we have agreed on before asking for further cuts.
Exactly.
So we already need to cut further and further.
I agree with this vision. We don't have to be optimistic, we have to be logic and realistic.
Yes.
They have, in Glasgow and before in Paris in 2015, they have agreed that we should decrease the global warming to 1.5 degree. Actually, we didn't reach this at all. And there are worse scenarios that by this rate of what I say of being what they call lazy or ineffective in facing the climate change, the worst scenario that this 1.5 would raise to 2.4 or 2.8, and this is very high. So the Egyptian point of view and vision is very realistic. We have to make the right measures to keep what we have already agreed, rather than to put the bar high that we cannot reach. And again, Egypt, like many African and Asian countries, we are not the cause. We are suffering from problems.
And by the way, Egypt, of course, is negotiating on behalf of Africa, but it also says that it will be an impartial. I mean, it will be a fair arbiter and an impartial arbiter, because we want our good. I mean, good for all, not just for our continent.
It doesn't mean that we are talking with the tongue of Africa or on behalf of Africa. No, we are talking of all. And Egypt actually is putting a lot of effort since 10 years. You could imagine that Egypt is the 27th country, and it's only producing 0.6% of the carbon dioxide, global carbon. Do you imagine that the second
You mean 27th
country,
by what?
in the arrangement from up to down?
Okay.
Is the United States of Emirates is the same as Egypt.
UAE.
Yes, it's the same as Egypt, so, which means that we are really doing our
great
best,
job, yes.
because we are at least 10 or 11 times as the population of UAE. So we are putting a lot of measures, and I think it is working. The only thing that we could work on is the green transportation, especially in the capitals, because it's very crowded. But if we spread it and make a green urbanization plans, our consumption of fossil fuel like coal and petroleum, it will decrease at least to the half.
And we are seeing that the mega transportation projects in Egypt are ongoing, are focusing on renewable energy and clean energy, and we're seeing that.
In the report, we are saying in the city of peace, Sharm el-Sheikh, now it is not only the city of peace, it's the green city of peace, because 22 of the hotels now of Sharm el-Sheikh has been flagged green hotels.
And there's a green hospital as well,
exactly,
which should be the first in the
president has opened it.
Yes.
And 66 other hotels are ongoing in the process to have this green flag. And all the summit, COP27, will be held, the transportation will be green transportation, either using natural gas or solar energy. So actually, according to our, what do you call, humble financeability, we are doing our best.
Indeed. Other topics you explained very well, the one about adaptation and culture. Green funding. Talk to us about green funding, one of the themes which will be up there. I mean, finance is very important.
In this summit, as you heard in the report, there are drawbacks that have some drawbacks, like the Russian and Ukrainian war, like the post-pandemic side effects for the whole world. But actually, they are pushing or positive effects, because they say that you have to transfer from the funding that brings you more carbon dioxide emission to green funding. Now, some of the European funding, they say in the brochure that if you got a project for building anything and you ask for a transportation, if you ask me that I will go with a plane, even it will cost me more, the funding destination, 4 times more, to go by, let's say, by a boat or whatever, they will give you the money. So the green funding is putting more financial accountability on the hope to have less carbon dioxide emission. And I think all of the world countries has to take the same. When I say green funding, it says that I don't have to do anything that will harm the environment. We have to increase the forest. We have to increase the. It's go green world. This is the flag of.
We have to reverse what happened in the last decades.
Yes.
Dr. Abdel Jawwad, even under, you talked about the 1.5 degrees Celsius trajectory. There is even if we stick to the commitments that we have today, there could be a 2% degree Celsius trajectory, which by the end of the century, and this makes for a risk of tipping points such as the melting of the ice sheets in Antarctica and Greenland, and this will be what some call runaway climate change. So could you tell us how dangerous the situation is if nobody commits to, no party commits to the already agreed upon reductions?
Actually, I will talk from a side of movies. There are many movies which we call side movies, like End of the World, Independence Day, and The Day After Tomorrow. They don't have to be science fiction. Now it's reality. Yes. Now we are creeping to this reality, and it is not, if we keep on the same manner of not respecting our environment really well, she will teach us a very bad lesson. As you say, it will not be 2 degrees Celsius increase, it will be 2.8, which is mean the 2 poles will melt, and there will be a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes, floods that you cannot control, because actually environment, we are now giving you the lesson. So we have, and again, actually from our side, we are talking for everyone, but from the side of the middle income and low income countries, we don't have so much in contribution, because we are not the problem makers. Actually, we are whistleblowers. We are just whistleblowers saying to the people who are making the problem, please think about us and about you at the center.
On the topic of energy, Dr. Abdel Jawwad, they will be talking about aspects of energy and climate change, including renewable energy and energy conversion, green hydrogen, and smart grids. How important is it that the whole world switches to renewable energy or cleaner energy or energy friendly to the environment?
It's very obvious. In order to achieve low carbon emission, you have to get rid of the fossil fuels like petroleum and coal, in the favor for the green energy like green hydrogen. And by the way, the government is putting a lot of projects to motivate researchers to have more green hydrogen projects from the research point of view, and to increase the capacity building in all the universities. And also, so everybody is trying to make this what they call transfer. It is not easy from not a friendly fuel to completely friendly fuel or green fuel. To have a green environment. We are talking actually, it's a very strong and very, what they call, very sensible efforts that are going on in Egypt. Very, very, very good.
Indeed. One of also the topics that should be discussed is water, and there will be a water day. There should be a water day at the COP27. topics such as water scarcity, potential drought, cross-border cooperation, and improving early warning systems, from rising water levels and potential floods and so on. That shall be also a very, very important topic, and this is one of the main dangers playing with the level of water around the world.
These, besides it's a global risk for climate change, either for having many water, flood or something, or you have no water. And Egypt now is almost in debate with other countries to claim its rightful share of water. So we are very keen to talk in this and make and to stress that every country has its right to maintain its share of water, especially in these difficult times of drought and high temperature. So we would only maintain our share, and we are not asking to increase it. So it's a very what they call critical issue to Egypt as other countries as well.
Indeed, biodiversity, and I'm sure that this is a topic that shall interest you more than any one. You being press, of course, of molecular and environmental biotechnology. So that there should be discussions about nature, the ecosystems-based solutions, and so on. Talk to us about the dangers posed on, the oceans, the life, water life, and so on.
The climate change would make many environmental problems. One of them that we could lose one of the species, whatever the species is or are, by manipulating its microenvironment like water, drought, high temperature. The same issue holds true for the ocean and its effect on the coral reefs. Although there are many what they call global and international projects that Egypt is acquiring now to keep our coral reef what they call
protected.
Yes, our coral reef fortune. It's a fortune.
It is,
and it has no what they call example as it in the whole world.
A reserve.
Exactly. So it is
a natural
it's like a biological architecture that it should be what they call protected.
Or the natural reserve.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
So as we approach the end of our episode here, this conference, Dr. Abdel Jawwad, shall be watched by the entire world, I'm sure with great attention. How important is it that we raise awareness? I don't know where is the level of awareness globally about the issue of climate change. I know that awareness is rising in Egypt and it needs to rise more and more. But what about globally? I mean, what can such a conference here in Sharm el-Sheikh, in Egypt, do to raising awareness? And I'm sure that raising awareness globally is very important because those people out there around the globe will certainly put pressure on their leaders, to act morally, I guess, to protect the earth.
Yes. Actually, we have to admit that the climate change is considered something that it is not interesting for people in the high-income countries or the developed countries, which are not affected. Actually, we are more affected. And for us, it's considered a luxury, but I think that the current situation that we are seeing from the forest fires and drought and the evaporation of rivers,
even the heat waves.
Exactly.
That
so many people have died
hundreds,
in Europe.
Yes, yes.
So now they have the environment has really alerted them that hey, we are living in the same environment, so please cooperate to continue living, because we don't have any other options. Now it's very obvious. 20 years ago, oh, what is the environment? I don't care. But now you have to care. Really, you have to care. Because even the countries that you were using them for putting your high carbon dioxide emission are now what they call moving to say that I cannot accept it anymore. So all these factories should be what they call notified that they have to decrease carbon dioxide, otherwise you have to close.
Not only funding is important, and funding by the countries that cause the more emissions, but and by international organizations, but I'm sure that investment and global investment in businesses that are friendly to the environment is key to protecting Earth. So what can you tell us about that area? How important is it to draw investments globally, I mean across the globe, across the board, to environmentally friendly industries and businesses?
Actually, this is the ongoing trend now, is the green finance. So you could finance different enterprises, SMEs, on one condition, that their product has to be green. It doesn't have to affect the environment from A to Z. So if you ask for a funding from a bank, from a funding destination, even for a loan, you have to fill many papers that you what they call make a scheme that you don't have to harm the environment. Whatever waste you are producing, you have to get rid of it, or at least more favorably use recycling strategies in your factory, in your company, whatever. So I think this is going very well. The green world is ongoing.
Finally, the youth's role, and we talked about this at the outset, I guess will be very important again, not only here in Egypt, but across the board. The youth are the future, so they must be aware about this problem, and they must put their weight behind solving this problem, because this will hurt the youth more than anybody else, and the upcoming generations. So talk to us finally about the importance of the role of youth here in Egypt and globally.
Actually, here in Egypt, we are doing our best, and all of our colleagues is doing our best to increase the awareness, especially for the youth, so they know now in advance how preserving, adapting, and protecting the environment will make their quality of life much better. And I think it's happening on the same rate on all other countries worldwide, and even in Africa, which is the poorest continent in the world.
That's good to hear. And I'm sure that you, Dr. Abdel Jawwad, as myself and our dear viewers, we are all here in Egypt waiting to host the world in Sharm el-Sheikh in November for COP27, and hope that our beloved country will play a leading role in getting the world to act in a way that will save all of us and save our Earth. On behalf of you, dear viewers, we thank very much our dear guests here in the studio, Dr. Mohamed Abdel Jawwad, and he is a professor of molecular and environmental biotechnology, and also professor of immunology at Hilwan University. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdel Jawwad.
Thank you, sir.
Great to have you with us.
Yes.
Hope to see you again.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have you here in November, inshallah. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching Business Insider. This is Mohamed Abdurrahim, and this is goodbye.